Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Construction Without Limits, How JOC Helps Create Award-Winning Facilities. Today we'll be discussing job order contracting and some of the benefits that it can bring to your facilities and your projects. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editor-in-Chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar today is presented by Gordian. Before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions in the question box in that panel. Please send your questions in at any time for the speakers, and they will be addressed after the presentation. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure it is expanded, and you can access the question box. Also, if at any time you experience a technical difficulty, you can send a message to us in that question section, and someone will address it privately right away. Also, just a quick note that Gordian will provide a copy of this presentation and a link to the video archive of this webinar via email post-event, so please keep that in mind. Also, if you're interested in continuing education credits, you will receive a certificate of attendance in an email from Facility Executive after the webinar, and you can report that to your association for CEUs if you'd like. Now let's move on and introduce your speakers. We have three speakers today. Jason Chin manages construction contract services for San Francisco Public Works, which includes the Public Works Job Order Contracting program. San Francisco has multiple departments with separate JOC programs, and Jason acts as a citywide point of contact, leading discussions that generally impact all JOC programs across the various San Francisco departments. Jason is a licensed engineer in the state of California, and he worked at the San Francisco Public Works over the past 16 years on projects ranging from small tenant improvements to major neighborhood infrastructure redevelopments. Our second speaker today, who you'll hear from, is Mike Smeckel. He currently serves as the Vice President of Planning and Engineering for the Tucson Airport Authority, and he leads a team that complete TAA's planning, environmental, design, and construction projects for Tucson International Airport and Ryan Field there. Mike previously served as the Senior Director of Development Services and Director of Engineering for the TAA. Prior to joining TAA, Mike was a project manager and engineer for a Midwest-based consulting engineering firm. He completed design and construction projects at airports ranging in size from large hubs to small general aviation facilities. He's an accredited airport executive and a licensed professional engineer. And today leading the discussion is Matt Schroeder with Gordian. Matt has 28 years of construction experience as a contractor, real estate agent, and owner project manager in the private, commercial, and public works sector. Matt has worked for Gordian for the last 13 years as an account manager and now as a sales business development representative. So we'll hear from these three gentlemen shortly. Or we'll go over the agenda quickly. You'll see that on your screen there. We'll talk about the challenges of facilities in this JOC space and construction projects, solution for overcoming the challenges, the benefits of job order contracting will be covered, and then you'll hear about some award-winning facilities that have been achieved through this process. Before I do hand it over to Matt Schroeder of Gordian, we do have a poll, and you'll see that pop up on your screen. There you go. Okay, thank you, Matt.
All right, so some of you will see a quick polling question up here. What are the most common challenges you face when prioritizing your facility projects? If you could just take a quick 15 seconds and choose one of these items, it'll give us some criteria for the discussion. I'll pause there. All right, thank you for submitting those. What are the most common challenges that you face when prioritizing your facility projects? Well, it looks like a big one is limited budget, and believe me, that's not an uncommon pain that we see with a lot of our clients. Coming in, again, deferred maintenance seems to be a big one, and limited resources, internal staff, and contractor availability. So thank you for doing that. All right, I apologize for the delay there. I was just getting control of my mouse. Let me start with backlog and deferred maintenance. what are some of the biggest challenges you face when addressing backlog and deferred maintenance? Limited resources. How do you ensure high quality work is being done and shortcuts aren't avoided? With your budget, we all know that this is a huge concern, especially with capital improvement programs, fiscal year spending, what have you. How do you maintain your project budgets without losing quality of work? How do we overcome these challenges? Well, obviously, hopefully that's why some of you are on the webinar today. Well, today we're here to talk about another tool you can put in your toolbox, which you can see on the screen. You have limited and numerous abilities to do procurement and provide construction services. But today we'd like to talk about job order contracting, or as we call in the industry, JOC. So simply to define job order contracting, what it is it's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity process known as IDIQ. What this does is it enables contractors to compete for a single competitive bid for individual projects. The tasks are based on a competitively bid preset price book that we use in Gordian called a construction task catalog. What is the value of this to you? Well, hopefully the first is it saves time and money. Second, provides transparency and auditability. And third and most important, a supplemental tool, and not as a replacement to replace any other procurement tools or construction services you currently have for your services. From one competitively awarded contract, you're able to complete an indefinite number of projects. Some of the projects we put here are what we see a lot in the field with our clients. So we're looking at straightforward new construction, repairs, modernization, replace in kind. This seems to be a big tool for maintenance and facilities. Emergency work, especially time sensitive when you're treating the job just as you would a formal and time is of the essence, and alterations. So you're asking maybe what are the benefits of JOC? I'll tell you personally, from being an owner and using JOC, project backlog and execution was a huge tool that I used JOC for. What advantages does JOC provide for addressing your project backlog and deferred maintenance? There's also additional resources. How does JOC make the best use of resources and avoid shortcuts? We all know that certain items and certain types of T&M can provide shortcuts and reduce our quality assurance. Cost control. How has JOC helped you deal with unforeseen circumstances? So today we're going to be talking about some award-winning facilities that have utilized job order contracting. San Francisco Public Works, Ocean Beach, Sandbag placement. There was a need to replace a cliff to prevent further erosion under the road and of the Great Highway. The timing for this project was about 6 months, and the project start to completion was 8 days. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to send this over to Jason because I've kind of spoken over some of the things that he might want to talk about on this project and talk about the results and the benefits of using job order contracting.
Hi everyone, this is Jason Chin with San Francisco Public Works. So thank you, Matt. So as you can see, if you're looking at the slideshow from this picture, we have some very large sandbags that are holding off some erosion that has happened along the Great Highway, which is on the western side of San Francisco. And if we are going to talk about how JOC's flexibility allowed us to complete this project, it's because there was so much involvement from different owner agencies, so many different agencies involved with the area, which included Public Works, as well as our San Francisco Public Utilities Agency, Rec Park, and so on. And getting everybody to agree on what can be done, what should be done, who owns what, who pays for what, that took a long time to figure out on our end. Nothing that concerns the contractor. But what made this successful is that the contractor was ready to go, knowing that we could have called them at any time to go out and make the fix. And by the time we had everything set up on our end, the contractor was able to get the work done in 8 days and get out of there. So this wouldn't have been possible in a standard design bid build format of procurement. There's no way we could have put a design together for these conditions with ever-changing conditions out there at Ocean Beach. You have harsh shorelines with wind and the ocean washing away a lot of the sand out there, and with conditions changing on a day-to-day basis or even more frequent than that, we wouldn't have been able to put a design bid build package together and wait for the procurement to happen. So JOC was certainly helpful in making this project successful and smooth. The collaboration that happened between Public Works and our JOC contractor, Yerba Buena Engineering, was seamless. They've been out there at Ocean Beach several times, so we were able to use them to do the work quickly because they were familiar with the processes, having worked out at that location on several other projects over the past several years. So their familiarity, our trust with them, having them already in contract to go out there and do work was a great benefit for us to make this project happen.
Thank you, Jason. Those are some great project notes, and it sounds like JOC was implemental to the success of that project, so thank you. Mike, I'd like to throw this over to you so you can discuss some of the ways you use JOC for the Tucson Airport Seagate edition.
Sure, thanks, Matt. So the airport had a unique challenge about just over a year ago at this point. We were getting ready for a new airline to come into the airport, and the airlines were the more traditional or the newer ultra low cost airline model, and one of their big concerns was the cost structure of our main terminal, and they were really interested in looking for a simplified space to be able to operate out of. So with airline negotiations and trying to get airlines to come in to start new service, it's a very kind of chicken and egg kind of scenario we always run with folks, and not wanting to start a project until we are sure they want to come in, but they don't want to commit to coming in until they know they have a facility that will be able to operate. So we were running into the situation of we had a space identified, we knew we wanted to renovate it, but how can we deliver the project in a timely manner and be assured that the airline was ready to commit to this? We didn't want to spend a little just under $1 million on this project if they ended up not coming. So the reason we chose job order contracting for this project, again, was, really the main driver was that timeline. And being a public entity, we, doing traditional design bid build, some of what Jason said just was not going to be an option, to do a public advertisement of any sort. So the job order contracting method allows us to use, fulfill our public, advertising, our public bid process. It meets those requirements, but it does avoid the, it happens at the beginning. So we don't, or, when you do set up the initial job order contracting, so we don't have to do it for each individual project. So this project, again, we had a very, very short timeline. And one of the other advantages of having the job order contracting come on is we had the contractor almost in a design build scenario. They were able to kind of start pricing things out, start looking at it as the designer was still working through the design. So they had the ability to kind of sit side by side with the design team and make suggestions and how to, make sure it can be built quickly and just from a cost value engineering perspective, how to make it most cost effective. And obviously with the job order contracting, having the list prices essentially that you're bidding against, you really what the pricing is going in. So it is very transparent. So really for this project, that was really our our challenge, is trying to get it done in a very short time frame, meet our public bid requirements, and you know, having that contractor work side by side with the designer just to expedite the entire process. And it was a very successful project. We, you know, completed on time. Our airline has now started service and has been operating out of there for the, you know, for the last 8-9 months now. So it was a very unique way to get a project done for us. This project was about $900,000, and I think what was unique for us is we typically have used job order contracting for more in the maybe the, you know, $50,000 to $500,000 range. This project was the first one we had done this large as a JOC. So, but certainly we were very happy with the process and how it went.
Thanks, Mike. Two great points you made there was that collaboration and relationship with the contractor, which is key to the success. And the other is that JOC isn't always put in a box based on a fiscal dollar amount. We see a lot of projects that can go anywhere from a small amount, small being relative to larger projects to help them with their facility needs. So just to recap, challenges like deferred maintenance, limit resources and budget, I mean, they're virtually inevitable in any public works sector. The other is just JOC is another tool to eliminate your challenges and set you up for success. It's not there to replace what you have already. And by harnessing the power of job order contracting, everyone can recap the rewards of success and potentially an award-winning facility. So I know we've gone through this presentation quite quickly, but what I would like to do before Q&A, and obviously there's a note there for more information, you can contact Mary O'Neill. Her email address is at the bottom of the screen there. I would like to ask Mike and Jason, based on your experience with these projects, how would you see using job order contract in the future? Mike, let me start with you.
Well, I think, you know, here at the airport, job order contracting has that niche for us. Most projects we like to work on are in that, above our, they reach the point where we have to publicly bid it, so over $50,000 for us. But then, but it's really too small to really go through the public bid process. It's really onerous to do, to do a public advertisement for every single one of those small projects. So we really enjoy using job order contracting for that range. And like you mentioned earlier, it's, a lot of tenant improvement type stuff, a lot of MEP and, replacement type of projects. We really find job order contracting to be effective. The reason, going to the reasons we like it again is we have kind of a list of contractors that understand how the airport works. They know our unique security requirements. They're already appropriately badged at the airport. So all of that really saves time when we have a project that they can come in, negotiate a price and really hit the ground running very quickly. So it saves staff time in that we know the contractors, we know they do quality work. And so the oversight that you might have on more of a low bid project is not there because you have, trusted contractors that do a lot of work for the airport. So those are the kind of the, why we like to do it. It helps our staff time as well. We can do more projects on these just smaller job order contracts because doesn't require as much oversight, doesn't require as much resources from our procurement folks to get the projects under contract. And we have confidence that we're going to get a good quality product.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That points to another great polling point with staff limitations and how this can be a resource to help with that, maybe augmented staff. Jason, same question to you.
Sure. I'd like to echo some of the things that Matt said, which is here in San Francisco, we have certain limitations that, limit us for what contracting mechanisms we can use. And for JOC specifically, we are in the $10,000 to $600,000 range of projects. But JOC is very effective for delivering those type of projects because, kind of like what Matt mentioned, we're procuring the contractors up front and dealing with a lot of that time that's spent on that ahead of time for before the project comes on board. So we're able to execute a lot of these projects quickly, turn them around, be able to directly assign these projects to our stable of JOC contractors and know what we're going to get. And when I say direct assignment, we've already done the public procurement process, competitive procurement up front. So knowing what you're going to get with contractors who may be familiar with a facility or have certain expertise in certain types of trades or areas, or just understanding what you're going to get out of timeline and turnaround. A lot of things that we would consider on our end as the administrators of our contracts can help us decide what to do with what contractor, and JOC has been good for that. Also, in San Francisco, especially for public works, we have so many facilities and so many types of projects that we need to be able to handle, and having a stable pool of JOC contractors in place who can deal with all of these types of things, whether it be tenant improvement projects or outdoor utilities, underground utilities, parks, industrial facilities like our treatment plants. You name it. We have a lot of facilities that we have to take care of, and we have some contractors that we like to be able to turn to do small projects. So to echo some of the past points, being able to collaborate with the contractor and help our staff be able to do things a little better, being able to save on time, being more transparent. It's a good tool to have in our tool belt. I mean, it doesn't work for every project, but for the projects that it does work for, it works well for us.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I know that we overskipped some of the questions previously in this webinar, and I do apologize for that. I would also like to allow a little time, Mike, if you'd like to address some of the comments that I went over in the beginning of the slide regarding anything with backlog. I know you've addressed some of the staff. Were there any of the poll questions that came up that you can relate to in regards to the Tucson Airport?
Well, I think certainly just about all of them, to be honest. From a backlog perspective, again, we're just, like I'm sure everybody is these days, relatively limited staff resources and even contractor resources. That it's hard for us to, it's difficult to execute some of these smaller projects and get contractors interested in bidding on them when there's so much work right now. So again, because of our unique security, safety requirements, all those sort of things, and then, just the requirements to get badged and get background checks, all those things going on these smaller projects, we've had we've tried to go out and do a regular design bid build, and nobody's bid on them because it's just, there's so much other work going on. They can make a profit, running down the street at somewhere where they don't have to worry about, getting fingerprint background checks on their staff and whatnot. So, having the JOC as a tool to, bring people that have already been pre-cleared or gone through all those checks allows them to hit that ground running really quickly. So we can just clear backlogs much quicker on those projects. They're familiar with our facilities, and even the procurement process, we use them typically in even on some of the budgeting processes. We will bring our, the JOC contractors that we use on a regular basis, bring them out there during hey, this is what we have. This is, as long as it's not a, heavy design related thing, if it's a straight kind of replacement of of an MVP type of unit or something, we will have them come out, work with our maintenance or work with our project management team and just develop a scope right there, develop a budget for us. And then we can, get it obviously approved through our budgeting process, but then turn around and execute it quickly. So it really does help on reducing that backlog and helping, budget for projects. So.
Great point. Thanks, Mike. Jason, how about you? Any of the polling questions that you saw as a pain that JOC has helped you resolve?
Sure, I can say it's pretty much all of those points as well. Budget and time seem to be an issue with the majority of projects, not necessarily JOC, all projects, but the project that JOC deals with in San Francisco. Yeah, time and budget. So if you consider the range of projects of $10,000 to $600,000 for us, many times it doesn't make sense for us to spend the amount of time and the amount of potential money for design. You know, bringing a project architect or a project engineer on board to design something that's competitively bid through a formal design bid build procurement process, and then the timeline that it takes to certify that contract into place. You know, a lot of our clients are not going to be able to swallow that pill for the time and money that it takes for them to do something that, in their mind, they probably think it should be cheaper than what, you know, Public Works as an entire project service can provide, and the timeline that it takes. So job order contracting helps address with that niche of projects, the time and budget issues that we experience with a lot of the requests that we have, as well as the collaboration. I mean, going back to the design or preparation of scope documents, you know, if it's a repair or maintenance of a facility or even upgrades, we can take our JOC contractor out there with a joint scope meeting and speak with them. Hey, this is what we've put down on paper. This is our ideas, but take a look at it and see if we should be doing something different. We can have those type of conversations with the contractor directly. So it does help give a better product being collaborative with a contractor in the scope development process. Instead of, let's say, not having any contractor in place, having the project engineer or architect design something that may or may not work the best, and then going through the issues of change orders and scope changes during construction and all the contract modifications that come along with that. So for our niche of projects, it makes a lot of sense to be able to have the features that job order contracting provides.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And again, both you gentlemen made some very valid points, and I congratulate you both on the success of your facility projects. They both look amazing, and fortunately, job order contracting was able to help you with both of these projects. So I thank you very much for your time and input on this call today.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
So at this point, we are wrapping up some of the webinar at this point. So didn't know if we want to allow some time for some of the questions to come in that maybe we can answer. If not, please know that we are available and can respond to any of these questions online or via follow-up phone call. And again, as stated previously, this webinar is being recorded, so you will have access to it.
And thank you, Matt. Again, this is Ann Cosgrove jumping in. Thank you, gentlemen, for the talk. And Matt and Jason and Mike, we do certainly have some questions. So if we can dive in, I will pose some of the questions that we've had from attendees coming in during the conversation here. So we'll go ahead. So let's see. I'll start kind of with a broad question. And you know, I'll pose it to any of you, Matt. This might be directed for you, but of course, whoever would like to answer, gentlemen. The question is, you had shown some examples of projects, and we've just talked about some projects that use JOC and the benefits thereof. But can you just kind of review exactly the fundamentals of how it's implemented? If you could kind of give a quick overview of maybe the points that are involved in JOC and you know what's done to put a plan like this or an approach like this into place for an organization.
Well, I can respond to that. This is Matt Schroeder speaking. There's different ways that public agencies can implement a job order contracting program. Most of our agencies will either piggyback or submit an RFP for a job order contracting contract. And then that's where Gordian would come in and develop a customized program for that facility or that program. And that would include a customized construction task catalog, a D&I team that does all your documentation for you, and also proprietary software called Gordian Cloud that sustains the procurement tool needed for the success of JOC. Once a contract is bid, or before we even bid, we do a lot of contracting outreach. We decide what types of contracts are going to solve your pain, trade specific or general. Once we go through that process and the lowest responsive bidder is awarded, We will then work with you and your program and anybody, as far as executives or your boots on the ground, to identify projects that would be appropriate for job order contracting. And again, under that master contract, we can then start awarding multiple projects. Projects are usually done by identifying the project, doing what's called a joint scope meeting, where we go to the field, verify any field verifications, any errors and omissions, anything we can do to define that scope, value engineer. We would then issue an informal RFP to the contractor, whether they self-perform or use subs. They have a certain timeline to provide that proposal to you. Once you receive that proposal, then we can add, omit, or correct any of the items in the proposal to match and uniform the scope. And then you would encumber funds or issue a purchase order as you normally would and move forward with that project. Again, the value in that is the soft cost in advertising, the speed and efficiency of awarding a project. And then again, the long-term is the partnership with the contractor to, basically it is performance-based. So the contractor does want to succeed and wants every project to be as if it were their last, so you will reward them with another project. That's the simplest way to explain the procurement process for JOC.
Thank you. Thank you. And so my question is, again, Matt or Jason, Mike, if you'd like to jump in, I'll follow on that with focus, two questions we had about contractors' role in this, or as I should say, the facilities professionals, working with the contractors. So the question is, what criteria does this process use to select the contractors? In the first case, I think you had mentioned something about performance, of course. So what criteria? And then a follow-on of that is, as an advocate of JOC, the question is, have you experienced challenges as a result of lax oversight of contractors? So what's the criteria for choosing, and then how do you keep a handle on their performance? Are some questions there.
So this is Jason. I'll go ahead and answer first, if that's all right.
Yeah.
The selection process that we have here in San Francisco, at least at Public Works, is because we don't know the type of work that's going to be assigned in the future within the term of the job order contract. We have qualification requirements that bidders are required to meet in order to be considered responsible bidders to be awarded the contracts. And for example, we have the majority of our JOC contracts are either for A licensed contractors or B licensed contractors. General building contractors being B licensed and general engineering contractors being A licensed here in California. And for example, our building contractors will say something along the lines of, you must have had 10 projects valued at least $200,000 each over the past 5 years, completed within the past 5 years. At least 5 of the projects must have at least 2 subcontractors, and provide us your owner representative contact information so that we can verify the information. What that does is it shows us that the contractor who bids on the master contract has shown to deliver a certain amount of work over time with a certain cost per each project, and been able to deliver overseeing other subcontractors. And that's kind of a bare bones minimum requirement without having any definition of what the scope would be. The scope that they would have had for those projects being, let's say building renovation or tenant improvement or those type of projects for our B licensed contractors. So that when we get started with their job order contract, we'll know that they can at least handle multiple projects at once over the life of their contract, which in San Francisco can be as short as a 1-year term or as long as a 5-year term JOC contract. And that's what we do to screen contractors to kind of get them in place. But you find out more about the performance of the contractor once you get them going in the program. So you'll find out how collaborative they're willing to be, how quick they can turn things around, how well they can execute in terms of the physical construction. You find that out during the life of the contract, and it's almost like rewarding the contractor for good work with more work, because we can do that. So you find that out. Having a stable of contractors, at least for us, multiple contractors who we can go to, will allow us to have that flexibility to accommodate the number of projects that we have coming in, as well as the types of projects. And then if you're talking about challenges, for some contractors, it can be a tough transitional period to translate the scope of work and cost through the construction task catalog, which they're bound to use within the job order contracting system. But the contractors who are knowledgeable and savvy enough to use that catalog and be caught up with the system that is JOC, those are the contractors who are going to be successful being able to work with us. So our challenge is getting contractors on board who are qualified and then having them adjust to the style that is job order contracting. And if that can all happen, then we have a good contract set up in place to be successful.
Thank you. And Jason, while I have you there, we have a question that specifically came in about San Francisco's process, so I'll just pose it to you now. And the question is, how did San Francisco establish JOC as part of its procurement policy? Council approval or other method? How did that come about?
That's a great question. So it was back in the early 2000s, I want to say 2001 or somewhere around there, that San Francisco decided to allow job order contracting as part of, as one of the contracting mechanisms that we are allowed to use. And we can do this because San Francisco is a charter city, that we can pass legislation that changes how we can govern ourselves and do, municipal functions within San Francisco. So we can make those changes in our administrative code, and that's what happened back in the early 2000s. Now, we had some resistance, obviously, to anytime you have something new, people are going to question it. But and I wasn't involved in that process, but I know that, let's say, unions would be concerned out here in San Francisco about the amount of work that maybe they wouldn't see because it's no longer publicly advertised on a per project basis. So we had some resistance over there. But we got into an agreement with our Building Trades Council to be able to notify them of the work that we have through job order contracting. So with that issue taken care of, all it was writing up the legislative code into our San Francisco admin code to define the structure, the limitations, and other parameters in place for how to operate job order contracting programs. And it kind of took off from there. It's been almost close to 20 years of being able to utilize job order contracting in San Francisco.
Oh, wonderful.
That kind of
Thank you.
The question.
Yes, thank you. So, Mike, with the airport, I want to just turn a question back to you, let you have a chance to talk a little bit about your facilities and how JOC's working for you. So the question is, how do you ensure, with the JOC in place, how do you ensure high quality work is being done at the airport and that shortcuts are being avoided? So, quality control in this process. Can you talk a little bit about that from your standpoint?
Well, I think the main thing we like to do, again, because you typically have multiple contractors available to you on the job order contracting, and we typically, if we start, if it's a new contractor, we will probably start them out on a relatively small project where it can, the oversight can be a little easier to maintain, just and keep tabs on them. But again, the nice thing about JOC is you get to pick from your list of contractors that are on the JOC, and if somebody does good quality work, you can for a reasonable price, or for the negotiated price, you continue to pick them. If they don't, you can go to the next contractor on the list, essentially. So, over the years, we've certainly got a number of contractors that have just, again, established, their ability to do good quality work with relatively little oversight. So that, obviously, we still continue to oversee them, but that's the reason we use job order contracting, is the oversight. They've established that quality over the years, and if they all of a sudden that quality changes, either we have the ability to go to a different contractor. So it's in their interest to, make sure they continue to deliver those projects and do good quality work with, the staff oversight being relatively minimum.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask a question, just a quick question that we haven't touched on yet. Can this process help us meet minority and women-owned business requirements? Is that part of the framework? Whoever would like to jump in on that.
Sure, this is Jason. I can chime in on that. San Francisco does have requirements for us to also meet local business requirements. Local businesses, which include, minority-owned and women-owned businesses, and we have a couple of different ways that we are allowed to structure our master contracts for JOC, and that would be listing subcontractors at the time of master contract procurement, or listing subcontractors per task order at the time of task order. So there's not a master list that the prime would have to refer to from task order to task order, right? And what we've found over the years is that it makes more sense to list subcontractors per task order because then you can ensure better quality of work because you allow the contractors to utilize the appropriate subs for the types of projects, like I mentioned for San Francisco, that being unpredictable, the type of projects that come in. And then if we use that mechanism, then we set a commitment, a required commitment that they need to meet for using local women-owned or minority-owned or other types of owned local businesses for the life of the master contract. Meaning, let's say if we were to say, 25% of the amount of the work paid to the prime through the contract, 25% of that amount must be paid to these local business enterprises. We set that up front, and we assign the contractors work task orders, basically each project throughout the life of the contract. And we as contract managers, administrators, we can see their progress, not only what they propose for each project, but the actual payments that go through. We check to make sure that they're paying their subcontractors the amounts that they said they would. We keep track of how much of it is actually to the local businesses. So that's a way for us to meet those local business requirements. We found that to be effective, listing it at the time of task order, because it's conducive to allowing a contractor to use local business subcontractors when, let's say, in the other format, their listed, electrical contractor was not a local business enterprise. Well, if you were to force them, based on how the contract was structured, to use their electrical non-local contractor, that's not conducive to meeting the spirit of giving business to our local contractors. So that's the way that San Francisco, at least Public Works, I can speak for our department here, has done business to promote the use of local businesses. We found that method to be the most effective.
Thank you. Any other comment on that? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask another question about contractors, and then we'll get into the process a little bit. So one of the questions submitted is, can additional general contractors or subcontractors in our market, the questioner's market, be added to an existing awarded JOC contract? So can those be added? What's the limitations there, if any?
This is Jason again.
I can answer.
Okay,
go ahead, Jason. Go ahead and answer. No, sorry.
So if I understand the question correctly, I would say no, not really. You don't want to have JOC contractors kind of muddy the waters going across several contracts. Just like with any procurement, you're getting into contract with one prime, and that prime takes ownership with the owner agency on the work that's going to be done within the confines of that contract. If you have another master contract in place with another prime contractor, not sure how interested any side of the table would be in having that second prime contractor subcontract the other prime contractor to do work under that contract. Doesn't quite make sense. And if I'm not understanding the question well enough, my general answer is kind of what Matt and Mike and I had said, which is having a good stable of contractors in place. So in San Francisco, we have several contracts and several contractors in place with the requirement that no one contractor in San Francisco can hold more than one JOC contract at any given time outside of certain exceptions, which prevents any one or two or however many few contractors from monopolizing our job order contracting program and potentially compromising it. So it's important for us to be able to have that stable, use contractors appropriately for what they're good at and what they're to do work for, and use the contracts within the confines of their parameters.
This is Mike. I'll add a little bit and probably start answering your process question. So for the airport authority, we don't actually, TAA does not actually own any job order contracts. We piggyback on our other partner agencies, government agencies. So whether it be City of Tucson, Arizona, State of Arizona, we have actually a long list of government agencies that allow us to piggyback on top of their job order contracting. So we don't actually own that job order contract. And to be honest, we've certainly run into some scenarios on some of the on more of the unique kind of specialty, maybe equipment that we need to replace. And we've worked with the vendor and found out, yes, are you on one of these job order contracts? You can we have the ability to go across multiple job order contracts through all the agencies, and if they're on one of them, that within that expertise, we've used that job order contracting. So it's, I guess I would speak from the smaller governmental agency perspective. If you have the ability to piggyback on your larger partners, that is certainly helps, and it certainly spreads the pool of contractors that are available, because again, most of these agencies have multiple job order contracts for various type of work. So between all of those, we have a pretty long list of contractors we can choose from. And again, they all come on; those contracts all start and stop at different times as well. So you have a pretty good scope if you have the ability to do that piggybacking method.
Thank you.
And so this is Matt speaking. The only thing I would add to that, just as a caveat, is that if there are contractors that are interested in the job order contracting program, we're always looking to recruit for the next time we're going to bid or solicit to get them involved in the program, and also know that subcontracting opportunities are always open for first, second, or third tier.
Thank you. And Matt, I'll piggyback on that. And what Mike and Jason have both just talked about, a question that had come in, really just kind of reiterating, but I want to make sure to address it. So one of the questions was, so time savings on the front end in using a portfolio of pre-qualified go-to contractors, that's a big part of where the time savings comes from in this JOC process, having that portfolio ready. I mean, that's one of the big points, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. And the other is, and it's what we don't address in the room, but when we issue a job order contract or a task order, the contractor, because the price in the book is fixed, their profit and overhead is fixed with an adjustment factor, and all we're discussing is this the appropriate unit of measure, or is this the appropriate line item? The expediting of the project usually goes faster, again, because their goal is to get the job completed as quickly as possible, to go on to the next one and hopefully be rewarded for their work. So there is no incentive in JOC to delay or change order a project. Thank
you. So Matt, you just mentioned the book there, and so I do want to talk a little bit about pricing. We had a question come in, and this is for you or any of the other gentlemen on the call. How do you establish accurate prices in the construction task catalog across various regions and nations? Can you give a quick overview of what that construction task catalog is, and then how do you, the project owner manager, establish accurate prices across various regions and nations?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Our catalog is very in-depth and very precise. Because we are now RS Means as well, we've collaborated a very large collection of construction data over the United States. We can use ENR index, but for specific clients, we actually narrow down specific regions. So let's say in Jason's case, we would target direct prevailing wage from the Department of Industrial Relations in his region. We also target manufacturer and vendors locally in the region to verify cost as accurate as possible. And then we also work with an absolutely outstanding team of engineers that is constantly collecting data, be it from stocks, local trading. We also know that, for an example, lumber was skyrocketing last year, and we know that lumber has dropped half in cost to this year because of supply and demand. So our teams constantly try to keep up with that data and make sure that a book is accurate as possible when bidding. And again, when bidding any construction task catalog, because there are so many line items that are usually a CSI index from 0 to 50, 2004 master format, we vet that with the client before bidding. So we would sit down, allow them to review the cost associated with those construction tasks and make sure that we're on point. In fairness, we know it's a partnership with the contractor, so we want to make sure that the costs are as accurate as possible, because we know that the contractor has to be successful in order for the program to be successful.
Thank you. So another question, and we have time for just a few more. Have you, any of you on the panel here, have any of you ever had to scope a project to budget? Please, within this framework.
So I'll go first if that's okay. This is Jason. Yeah, a lot of times our client departments or other owner agencies here in San Francisco have a limited budget, and I guess the answer to that is we can work with our contractors to get an idea of how much something is going to cost. We just don't want to ask them to provide an estimate and not pursue the work with the contractor, right? They're not going to be as responsive to us if we kind of tease work for them and we just never assign it to our JOC contractor. So we want to be able to manage that delicately and be realistic with what we can do with the amount of budget that our clients have. So yes, there are times where our clients can only afford to do so much, and we can speak with our contractors to design the scope that would fit within the budget and still meet the needs of the tenants or the users or their own needs, because we can have that kind of collaboration. But at the same time, we just need to be careful about how we do that and not waste the contractor's time, because they're here to do work, make money, keep their business alive, and move on. And we don't want to waste their time, and we don't want to waste our time as well. So just being careful with how you do it is important to us.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay. So then we have time for maybe one or two more questions, and I thank everyone for sending in your questions. Please note that they can be addressed individually offline if we haven't gotten to your question. But what we'll jump into now is a question from an attendee that asked, how do I complete the necessary work behind the scenes to keep projects flowing while dealing with major issues? So any insight on that in terms of keeping those projects flowing, dealing with major issues at the same time?
I can go again. This is Jason. So that's kind of a vague question. I'll see what I can do to answer, but I think you have to rely on the feature of JOC that is the ability to collaborate with the JOC contractors. If you kind of keep the contractor in the loop with what you're trying to do, and they're being good partners with you in trying to complete work or being able to manage the issues that are happening in the background, then that ability to have that line of communication is valuable. If you don't have that with the other contracting mechanisms, that's what can result in, let's say, dealing with the contractors putting in claims or change orders for work or other things because we're not able to communicate with them at different times of the project life cycle. So I would say if you have things that you have to take care of in terms of issues or challenges or things in the background, don't forget about the ability to keep the contractor informed so that they understand what you as the owner is trying to accomplish and the challenges that you're facing. That line of communication is good to have.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answered the question, but those are my thoughts on my interpretation of the question.
So we do have time for one more question before we close it out. And Matt, I believe I would direct this to you, but of course anyone else jump in. But Matt, I think it's certainly for you. And it's asking about the JOC offering. And obviously we're talking about Gordian's offering. So do you provide the full database for cost book? Do you also provide training to in-house staff for this? So can you talk about that for a few moments?
Yes, and that's a very good question. Anytime we communicate with a client or prospective client, we will discuss what their needs are for a program. And again, not to broken record myself, but the customization of that book and making sure that the program is going to exceed their expectations is one of our first priorities and goals. As far as training, that is one thing that Gordian prides himself on. We provide continuous training throughout the program as needed. And we offer different service matrices to offset that burden of inputting and controlling your program as well. But to answer your question, yes, training is provided in the field by account managers. And actually we have technical support via online or phone. And the services never stop. We want to make sure that your program is successful. And Gordian's incentive is to reduce any risk mitigation on an owner's part and make sure that the program is working for them at all times. So training is a big part of that. And the answer in summary is yes, we provide ongoing training as needed to make sure you understand and all your associates are using the program efficiently.
Thank you. And Matt, just a quick clarification. Is the cost book available obviously in a book format, but is it also accessible in a software platform as well? How would this be accessed?
Yes, the book is available obviously as a hard copy, but is also uploaded through our software and is available electronically, as well as the specifications that go along with each book.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, it does look like we're out of time. That was a big discussion covering a lot of things, so I do want to thank Matt, Jason, and Mike. Thank you very much all for your input and for the presentation today.
No worries.
And thank you. And of course, I'd like to thank our attendees for your participation by both attending and by sending in questions. As I said, if your questions have not been addressed, they will be addressed individually, so you will certainly get your answers about the JOC process. Thanks again to Gordian for sponsoring the webinar. And as I noted, a recording of the webinar will be sent to you from Gordian along with the presentation slides, so keep an eye out for that. And thanks again, and have a great afternoon. Lastly, those who are in the Arlington, Virginia region, I'd like to highlight Facility Executive Live. That's a one-day facility management event that our magazine, Facility Executive, is holding on September 19 on the George Mason University campus. If you check out facilityexecutivelive.com, you can learn more, and we hope to see you there if you are in the area. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.